Are you okay with
want to get
that?
started?
Yeah, I can do the summer
So a few more
registration
people for
under
that. All right, let's jump into it. So I noticed there's still a lot of people outside trying to figure out where they need to go, and I've learned this really cool trick that gets them to figure it out pretty quickly. But I need you guys' help to do it. Are you guys willing to help me? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count to 3, and on the count of 3, I want you to scream and yell as if I just gave away $1 million. Can you do that? Okay. 1, 2, 3. They're like running. You can see them. Somebody's pointing. They're figuring it out. So thank you for that, folks. We're going to jump into things. My name is Christian Sadler. I've been a full-time entrepreneur and real estate investor for over 12 years now. I started when I was 22 years old. But I will tell you,
Ryan has it.
When I came down for the first time, I was the least likely. And if you guys look at my background or ask anybody that knew me when I was young, you'll agree with me. Just to give you some clarification there, I got kicked out of every school after grade school.
I started a contact.
I went to what's called an alternative school. Is there any alternative kids in the room? A few of you? All right, cool. You guys get it. You understand, right? I was bored with the curriculum, and so I found other things to do. I grew up out in Magna, raised by a single mom of 4. She did an amazing job. This isn't a poverty story or anything like that. My mom is my hero for what she was able to do for us.
You said text me about the
but at the same time, you can imagine, single mom of 4, there was a lot of things that weren't an option for us growing up. So extracurricular activities like sports and those types of things when I was younger just weren't an option for us. And that's where I started getting in trouble, right? I started finding my own extracurricular activities, and some of them were not maybe so legal.
Now this side.
Anybody accidentally light a field on fire? Yeah, nowadays, like with all the phone pictures and all that stuff, I was probably written up as a terrorist.
We have coding there.
Ask John.
Just doing stupid stuff.
John buys the books.
And needless to say, when I got kicked out of my junior high school, when I went to a alternative school, I started to see a different life. Growing out in Magna, it's all working class. I didn't know anybody who had really achieved anything financially, major in their life. But when I went to Central High School, right in the center of the Salt Lake Valley, I started meeting all these kids who had wealthy parents. These are the kids where the families had a 4-wheeler for every single kid plus a boat, right? The kids that went to Hawaii and Fiji and those types of vacations. And when I saw these kids that had, that type of lifestyle, I started paying attention to what their parents did. And almost every single time, their parents had something to do with real estate. I had one friend, his dad was a builder. They did very, very well for themselves. I had another couple of friends that their parents owned rental properties. And that's where they had a pretty cush lifestyle. And so I decided at 17 years old I wanted to be a real estate investor. Might make me kind of a dweeb, I know. But when I started pursuing that, I didn't know anybody who had achieved that with their life. I didn't know anybody who had that career path. And these parents, I was the kid that the parents didn't want you hanging out with, so I couldn't really go to them, right? And where do you guys think I went to figure out real estate investing? Internet. You said internet. This was 15 years ago, so there was like cat videos on the internet back then. There wasn't a lot. What was that one back here? Somebody else said something. Guru. Yeah. So back then, they didn't have the internet, but they had these big sheets of paper, right? They folded them up, and you would read them. They were called newspapers. And there were these companies that would take full spread ads in these newspapers, and they would say, this nationally published author is going to be in town for 3 days and 3 days only. They're going to teach you everything you need to know about flipping homes, right? And so I'd go down to the seminars. And at 18 years old, I went to my first seminar that I spent $3,000 in the back of the room. This is $3,000 that I didn't have. It was 2 days off of work.
You've already filled this.
That was, I was living paycheck to paycheck. And by the end of it, they said, we've taught you just enough now that you can hurt yourself. What you really need to do is spend $10,000 and come to our 5-day boot camp out in Florida. And I was, it was like a kick in the gut. I was so disheartened by that. I felt taken. I kind of had anger issues back then, so I was a little mad. I threw all the stuff away. But it wasn't very much longer, because right out of high school, I didn't graduate, by the way, half a year late, but I made it right as a super senior.
Who's that good-looking guy?
And I went into steel fabrication. So about one of the roughest breeds of construction there is out there. 12-hour days, 7-day weeks. I didn't walk out of there without a new cut or bruise or contusion. And they had me on these rotating shifts, day shift, night shift, and back again. So I was up late at night. What comes on late at night on TV? Infomercials. You guys get it, right? You've seen it. And they're good, aren't they? I mean, this one that I saw was like $10.99, money back guarantee. You're going to learn how to buy properties pennies on the dollar. I'm like, what do I have to lose? $11, I can do that. And after a series of phone calls over the next 3 days, I spent $6,000 on a coach to learn about tax liens. In the very first coaching session, he said, you're in one of the worst states to be buying tax liens. But let's go through the curriculum anyways, and we'll look at some other markets and how you can analyze that. And this continued to happen. So from the age of 18 to 22, with my hopes still high, I spent tens of thousands of dollars on what I thought was supposed to be education, and I wasn't any further ahead. The only house that I owned was my own home, and I bought that when I was 19 because I couldn't stand without a rent. And then I was driving down the road one day. Has anybody ever seen those little roadside signs, little handwritten signs that the real estate investors put up? We buy houses and stop foreclosure and those types of things. So I saw this roadside sign, and it was from somebody local talking about real estate investing, and I called it. And I came down, and I ended up seeing this group. And at first, I'll tell you, I said no. I said, I don't need any more education, I just want to do real estate. And they're like, okay, well, let me introduce you to some folks. And I met person after person after person who was living my childhood dream, who were investing in real estate full time. And so I decided to move forward with them as well. That was 12 years ago now. And my life is dramatically different. We've turned millions of dollars in real estate transactions. I get to travel the world and do some pretty amazing things. I've been written up in a book with high-level entrepreneurs like Timothy Ferriss from the 4-Hour Work Week. I mean, I never would have thought that I would be where I am now. And it's all because of this information and the people within this network. So I'm going to bring somebody up here who's going to share with you guys some powerful strategies and topics that you can implement right now. And he's somebody that I have a lot of respect for. John said his name outside, Mitch Nielsen. And Mitch has been with us just a little over 3 years, and in that time he's flipped 30 properties. He's picked up 24 rental units. And he's also a published author. He works on 5 flips at a time. I mean, this guy is just out there doing it. And more importantly than all those accomplishments is Mitch has helped countless individuals start their journey into real estate investing. So do me a favor, silence your phones, and welcome Mitch Nielsen to the front of the room.
Thank you, Christian. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. How you guys doing tonight? We good? Good. We have some awesome stuff prepared for you tonight. I'm going to teach you some financial strategies. I'm going to teach you some real estate investing strategies today. I want you to turn to your neighbor and apologize to them and say, I'm really sorry for all the brain matter that's going to splatter all over the place because we're going to blow your minds. It's going to be awesome. So, look, I want to start with a story. This story is about a young man who loved building cars from the ground up. Now, he would gather scrap metal together and he'd weld a frame and he would hand bend the sheet metal and he would do the upholstery himself and he'd build the engine from scratch. And these cars were just beautiful. And he'd drive them around town and people would see them and they wanted them. And so he got a lot of offers of, hey, why don't you build me a car? I'll pay you. And so quickly, entrepreneurial young guy, he thought to himself, well, I could start a business. I mean, how hard could it be to break into the auto industry, right? So that's what he did. He started a business building cars from scratch, and he put so much love and care into each individual car, and they were amazing. And he became really popular really fast. And what he would do is he'd get down payments on each order that he'd get, and he'd take the money from the down payments and he'd put it into the car he was working on, right? Well, the problem with that is that's not a scalable model. Eventually he got to a point where the orders were so far backed up that he couldn't keep up with the demand. And some people started wanting refunds. Well, that's a problem, because he had spent the money on the cars to fulfill the first orders in the first place, right? So what happened was, because of his popularity and because he got so far backed up and his inability to scale his business, he went out of business. He had to close the doors. He was bankrupt. So a few years went by. He went back to what he knew. He went back to being a mechanic and working on the farm. His dad was a farmer. And he never really lost his love for creating cars. And so he decided, again, he's like, I got some new designs, I'm going to try it again. And he started a business again. Problem was he didn't change enough about what failed from the previous company, and for a second time went bankrupt. Now, he thought to himself, maybe I just don't have the entrepreneurial whatever it is, and I'm just not a business owner kind of guy. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to work for my dad in the field, pay off my debts. I'm going to be a mechanic, and that's just, he resigned to just being an employee for the rest of his life. Now one day, he was at the state fair and he's wandering around looking at the different attractions, and he accidentally walked into the backside of the butcher's tent. Now, at the front of the butcher's tent, they have lots of different cuts of meat and sausages for sale. Back was a different story. When he wandered in there, he found a bunch of guys in white lab coats with plastic aprons on and a big long steel table. And on one end there was a bunch of raw carcasses, right? And the first butcher would pull a carcass up on the table and he'd make some cuts and pass it down to the next guy, and he'd make some cuts and then they'd pass it down to the next guy, and he'd do the same thing until you got to the last guy who would pull down a sheet of butcher paper, set a nice final cut of meat on there, wrap it up and push it to the front of the booth for sale. Now, what the young man thought was interesting about this is he knew it took a butcher about an hour to go through the whole a day to go through the whole process on his own of butchering down an animal. But the way they had this process set up, it was taking him 15 minutes. So he started to imagine, well, what happens if we had car parts on this end, and one guy put a little bit together and passed it down to the next guy, and he put a little bit on and scooted it down to the next guy, and then at the very end, you would have a finished car. We could scale the business at that point. Who am I talking about? That's right, we're talking about Henry Ford, right? Now, the third business that Henry Ford started, the third car business that Henry Ford started was called Ford Motor Company. It's still around today, 120 years later. And we all know Ford Motor Company is one of the most successful car manufacturers in the world, but a lot of us didn't know that backstory that, he kind of started in failure and almost didn't start a third company because of his failures. Now, the reason I start with that story is because one important thing happened to Henry Ford. A very similar thing happened to me in my life a few years ago. He changed his mindset. Let's chat a little bit about mindset. I'd like to share my story with you. When I was 27 years old, I was selling websites for a living. I was going business to business, convincing business owners and business managers to buy a website from me, and I was making about $40,000 a year. Now, I shouldn't have been complaining because $40,000 a year is average, right? That's a very average income, and I was happy. With the exception that in my early 20s, when I was 20, 21 years old, I had set some pretty lofty goals for myself. I had said, okay, by the time I'm 30, I want to be a millionaire. And by the time I'm 35, I want to make $1 million in a calendar year. And there I was, 27 years old, making $40,000 a year, living in a 2-bedroom apartment. So I was frustrated. I started looking around my industry, and I looked at the guy doing, the top guy selling websites, and he was making $150,000 a year. I thought, well, that's great money. I should just do that, right? And the only problem I had, because that is fantastic money, the only problem I had was that was not my goal. I would have a ceiling of $120,000 when my goal was $1 million. So I thought, well, maybe it's not in sales, maybe it's in management. And I looked at my manager, my top guy that was doing his thing, and he was making $250,000 a year. Again, great money. That was very tempting to pursue that path, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was $1 million. So I quickly decided that to make that kind of money was very unlikely to continue to do what I was doing and hit my goals. So what I decided to do was I decided to start studying wealthy individuals. I studied every millionaire and billionaire that I could find. I interviewed every wealthy person that I knew or that people that I knew, and I just started to take notes. And my notes turned into a book. No, my notes turned into a paper. My paper turned into a book. And my book, I recently published it about 1.5 years ago, went bestseller on Amazon. It went bestseller in 4 different categories on Amazon.com. It's called Mindset to Millionaire. Now, In the book, I talk about the difference between the two mindsets that I was studying. There is a completely different attitude that the employee mindset individual has versus the wealthy mindset individual. And I want to take a second to talk about some of the differences that I discovered. So the first difference that I discovered was that the employee mindset individual thinks in two currencies. Those currencies are money and time. And for the employee mindset individual, money is a much more valuable currency. Now that's evident because we were all taught that time is a resource that we can take and sell to our bosses. We sell them hours at a time for $15, $20, $25 an hour. And I want you to try an experiment, okay? I want you to go into your boss, and whatever you make in an hour, let's say it's $20, pull a 20 out of your pocket, slap it on his desk, and say, I want 1 hour back, please. What's he going to say? I don't understand. What is this, a joke? Oh, okay, I see. Well, here's double. Here's $40. I just want 1 hour, please. Just 1 hour that I sold you, I want back, please. Sorry, man, I can't help you. I don't know what you want me to do. I can't give you any of your hours back. Oh, okay, well, here's 10 times. Here's $200. Here's 10 times what you paid me for that hour. I just want one of them, please. There's nothing you can do. You see, when you trade an hour, you're trading a non-renewable resource. When you trade an hour, you can never get it back. Ever. It's gone. Now, money, on the other hand, it's a completely renewable resource. We're all wearing name tags today. If you wrote down to the penny what you made last year on your name tag, every one of us would be different. We all provided a different value. But you know what's the same between all of us here and these people? We all have 24 hours in a day. That doesn't change for anybody. So why is it that they make billions, some of them multiple times in their lives, when we go from 0 to thousands maybe once? It's the mindset, okay? Now, the wealthy mindset individual thinks in 5 currencies. Those 5 currencies have a very important order, and I want you to write them down. So pull out notes, pull out your phone, write these down. That order is, number 1, time. Time is the most important currency. Number 2, knowledge. Number 3, relationships. Number 4, credit. And number 5, money. Money is the least important to the wealthy. That's evident because it's the wealthy that own the jobs, and they're saying, hey, take all this money. We don't care. Here, have the money. Sell us your time, please. We want the time. What I found was as individuals got this balance more and more in order in their life, these priorities more and more concentrated in their life, they had an abundance of all of them. They were rich in all 5 of the currencies. Okay? Another thing I noticed was that the wealthy were business owners and real estate investors. Almost to a person. Now, when I first realized that, I thought, well, yeah, sure they are, because those activities make a lot of money, right? But as I started to study more, I realized there's layers to it. There's some depth to some of those reasons. One of them is taxes. We've all heard that the wealthy pay less in taxes, right? Well, what I found out is most of them do it legally, morally, and ethically. They use that second currency, knowledge. The wealthy, they study the tax law, and what they found when they studied the tax law is that business owners and real estate investors get to take more deductions than anybody else. It's crazy. While over here, the employee mindset individual trades their most valuable resource, time, for money, and then just does what they're told with the money. Oh, here's a W-2 form, just fill it out. That's how you're going to pay taxes. Okay, fill it out. Whatever. Right? Do you know W-2 is the most expensive way to pay taxes? There is not another more expensive way to pay taxes than W-2. It's also the only way whereby the government gets paid first. We're all familiar with withholdings, right? Government gets paid first. That only happens with the W-2 form. Okay, interesting. Some interesting things I learned. I wanted to set up that dichotomy. We're going to refer back to it a couple of times, but I just wanted to get familiar with the difference between the wealthy mindset and the employee mindset, okay? But I think we're all here because we want to know about some real estate, right? You want to hear about some real estate? Yes. All right, okay, let's talk about some real estate. This is a deal that I did recently. In fact, we just sold it. 2677 West Jordan Meadows Lane. Now, please don't drive by and look in the windows and what are they? Because we sold it. Somebody lives there now, right? So, but I share the address with you. So I think, has anybody in here ever been to the mystical land of West Jordan? Okay, so we all know, we're familiar with where this is. All right, here are the numbers on this deal. Okay, I purchased this property for $250,000. I put about $50,000 into fixing it up. Our holding costs were $10,000. Now, holding costs are simply the cost of the interest on the money that I borrowed, because I never use my own money to flip houses. I prefer not to. Okay? And I don't steal the money to invest in houses, right? I borrow it. And to get people to let me borrow the money, I pay them interest. Well, the other way is we get a bunch of you people in this room and then turn off the lights and steal your wallets. So, no, I'm kidding. And then our agent and closing fees were $25,000. So our total cost on this house was $335,000. Our after repair value that we calculated when we sold, or when we found the house, was $380,000. Now, we actually sold this house for $430,000. Because the market's going like this right now. We never count on market appreciation when we find a flip. We always plan conservatively. But I'm showing you the numbers that I ran when I bought it, so that I can show you how I raised the money and use other people's money to execute the deal. Okay? Because we're gonna get into some pretty good detail about that tonight. Now, it took me 120 days, and the original calculated profit was $45,000. Now, who would love to make $45,000 in 4 months? That'd be pretty awesome, right? The other cool thing that I'm going to share with you, I spent about 5 hours on this property. I hired out all of the construction. All I did was find it, put the deal together, find the money, close on it, and then showed up once a week and paid the contractors. On Fridays, it'd be there for about 10 minutes, right? Make sure they were on schedule, make sure they were on budget, and that's it. Took me about 5 hours to make $45,000. But it's because of my knowledge, because of my education that I've received, am I able to perform fix and flips like this. Now, what I do is pretty sexy, right? People love it, and it's because of those TV shows, right? Everybody thinks that, they see it on TV, everybody thinks that all you need is a hot wife and you can flip a house and make 90 grand. There's a little more to it than that, right? There's a system that we use to make sure that we're not going to do anything unsafe or that's going to lose anybody's money. But I drive a pretty nice car, and on my car I have some advertising that talks about my fix and flip business. And so at grocery stores and in parking lots, I get people coming up to me saying, "Hey, you fix and flip houses? I've always wanted to do that. I've seen it on TV. I got some really good ideas. Tell me what you think." And they'll tell me about all of their ideas. And I've talked to enough people now that I can fit them into one of 3 categories that I invented in my head. So I'm going to share those categories with you. The first type of investor is the moving guy. He's the guy that comes up to me and says, "Hey, you know what? That's a great deal that you have there. Fantastic numbers, but you spent way too much on the rehab." Because what I would have done is I would have moved into the house and worked on it after work and done the work myself. I could have saved $10,000 to $20,000 on this deal alone. And I said, okay, that's pretty cool. Except, another experiment I want you guys to try. Go back home to your significant other later tonight when you go home, and say, "Hey babe, new business model. We're going to start flipping houses. Now, we're going to move into a construction zone, and we're going to fix it up, and just as it's getting pretty, it's going to take us about 4 months, just as it's getting pretty, we're going to sell it and we're going to move into another construction zone. You okay with that? That's going to be our life for the next 18 years. What do you think?" They may not be okay with that, right? Moving every 4 months, even if you're single, is difficult. Now, because of that, what ends up happening is you stretch it out a little bit, right? What should take about 4 months now, maybe takes a year. And is $45,000 a lot to make in a year? Not really. It's about average. Working a construction job, where you live at the construction site, kind of sucks, right? So I don't want to be the moving guy. And if that's my strategy, how many can I do at a time? One. Now Christian told you, I do 5 of these at a time. So if I'm the moving guy, I'm limited to 1 deal at a time. It's not for me. Okay? Now, type 2 investor is the debt investor. How many people here have heard, raise of hands, that real estate investing is risky? I hear it every day. Oh, you're a real estate investor? Isn't that incredibly risky? What about 2008? Right? Well, the reason we have that reputation is because of the debt guy, this type 2 investor. Okay? Now, this is the guy that's read like 1.5 Robert Kiyosaki books. He knows just enough to be dangerous, right? He's just got his foot dipped into the wealthy mindset. And he's saying, you know what? These are fantastic numbers. Let's use other people's time and let's use other people's money. We'll pay the contractor what he's worth. And, we need to raise $300,000 to make this deal work. So he opens the Google machine and he starts typing away at, Salt Lake City fix and flip money. And up pops a list of hard money lenders. Now, anybody ever had any dealings with hard money lenders in the room? You've dealt with hard money lenders? Okay. Well, tell me about your experience. What kind of terms did you get with your hard money?
Basically, next paycheck went to pay them off.
Okay.
So you're in the same boat that you were in when you had to borrow from them.
Okay. Awesome. Percentage-wise, they charge 12 to 18%. Most conservative I found was 12. And they only let you have the money for about 6 to 8 months. Most conservative I found was 6, right? So using those numbers, and do you think these guys are super generous? You think like if you go to 6 months and 1 day, they're just like, don't worry about it. You'll pay me when you pay me. Is that the attitude that they've got towards their money? No, these guys are sharks, man. If you go over by even a day, they're going to be knocking on your door, taking the property back. Okay? So, the problem that I have with this is that this investor, maybe this first deal that he does works out perfectly. He buys it, he's on budget with the rehab, he does it all on time. His contractors are just, there's no problems with the property at all. He's able to sell it and make his $45,000. And that's when he's dangerous, because it worked. Right? Then he goes and he does the second property, and everything there goes flawless. Worked again. Now he's getting confident, getting a little cocky, right? Gets into the third deal. Is every deal going to go perfectly? One of the most important steps to becoming an educated investor is realizing that you don't have control over everything. There are just certain things that you can't control. I had a property up on 2700 East in Holiday. We were getting down to the last 2 hours before that we were going to close on this house to sell it and be done with it, right? I thought it was one of those flips that just went perfect. Like everything went perfect, it was all on time, everything. And then I get a phone call from my contractor 2 hours before closing. He says, hey, I'm here picking up the last of my tools, and the basement's full of sewage. New carpets, new baseboards, ruined. And I thought, well, this couldn't have happened 2 hours later. It wouldn't have been my problem. But what had happened was there was a sewer line running under the street, and our connection to it had severed. We didn't know about it, right? So what happened was all the sewage backed up and came out of the shower drain in the basement, and it was our problem. Did I have any control over that? Yet I was the one that had to pay to fix it. Now luckily we still made just a little bit of money on that property, but it was a $10,000 fix that I had no control over, but had to be prepared for. What about 2008? Can any of us control when the next 2008 type event is going to happen? No, and that's scary. I think that's what keeps a lot of people apprehensive about jumping into fix and flips and rentals and that type of stuff. Because what about 2008? I hear that all the time. What about 2008? Well, the problem is not everybody prepared for 2008 when 2008 happened. In fact, most people didn't. That's why a lot of people got taken. If you go back and look at the tax assessment for 2006, you'll find that this property was worth the $380 that we thought it would be worth now, back before the 2008 event, right? Fast forward to 2011, what you'll find is the tax assessment dropped to $280. It got a $100,000 haircut. Now, what happens if the next 2008 event were to happen while this guy's holding this property? The value cuts to $280. That's what he's able to sell it for because that's the market value. But he borrowed $300. What's the problem with that? Yeah, he's upside down, right? He's going to have to actually pay money to sell the thing. So you don't want to do that. Now we've got some creative minds in the room. What else could we do? Let's put our minds together. Just shout it out. Rent it out? Okay, so he finishes it in 120 days, puts some tenants into it. They pay the first month. They pay the second month. 4, 5. We hit that 6-month mark. And what happens? Our loan comes due. We don't have the money to pay it. The economy just tanked. So what are we going to do? Well, nothing. What happens is the hard money lender comes in and says, you know what, thank you for fixing up this house. It looks beautiful. And thank you so much for putting tenants into it. That was very kind of you. I'm going to take the house and the tenants and the cash flow. And don't think they won't, because they will. So in one deal, this debt guy loses his reputation, loses his relationships, that third currency, relationships. His real estate investing career is over in one deal because he didn't know how to structure it right. Okay? So let's talk about that third type of investor, the educated investor. That's what I am, and that's how I structured this deal, okay? So I want to talk to you specifically about a strategy. So I just showed you 2 ways not to do a deal, right? And hopefully maybe some of you came in thinking that was the way you're going to do a deal, and you're like, holy cow, I'm glad I didn't go try this before I came into this room tonight. I'm going to teach you exactly how I structured this deal, exactly how I structured the money. So take notes, please. We did what's called a debt equity blend. Not all money is created equal. This is the same numbers on the same house, using the same contractor, all the same stuff. All we're doing is understanding that not all money is created equal. Now, the secret to a debt equity blend is 2/3 debt, 1/3 equity. So we need to raise $300,000. What's 2/3 of that? $200,000, right? So we raise that in debt, and you know what? Let's even use that same hard money guy. We'll use that same guy just for fun, right? 12% annual interest rate. Okay? Now, let's talk about equity for a second. If it's 1/3 in equity, how much more do we have to raise in equity? $100,000. Okay, so I'm going to define equity real quick because there's 2 definitions to it. There's the real estate definition, which simply is the difference between what you owe on a property and what it's worth. Okay, the real estate definition. The business definition is simply ownership or partnership. We're talking about the business definition. Remember I said the wealthy, they're business owners and real estate investors, and there's a lot of layers to that, and it mixes often. Well, what we did with this is I started an LLC. What's an LLC? Limited liability company. It's a business. And I put my deal into the business. And then I went shopping for a money lender. A money partner, actually, an equity partner. I said, I got a business that has a deal in it that's going to make $45,000. Looking for a money lender. Anybody have money? I'm not raising funds here, but anybody have money in their checking account? I need $100,000. You have that in your checking account, savings account? How many people do you know have $100,000 sitting there checking their savings? Not very many. Maybe 1 or 2, right? Well, what I found was, while not very many people have that in checking or savings, there's $26 trillion in retirement accounts in this country. So there's a lot of people that have over $100,000 in their 401ks and their IRAs. And I learned 2 questions that changed my life forever. The first was, did you know that you can use your retirement account to invest in real estate? Now some people say yes to that question. And some people say no, it doesn't matter. Second question is the same. If I could offer double or triple your current rate of return, whatever you're getting right now in your mutual funds and your 401k, if I can double or triple that, and we'll back the deal with some real estate, some bricks and sticks, a house that you get if anything happens, would you lend with me on my next deal? What did I just say? Double or triple what they're currently getting, backed by real estate. What are mutual funds backed by in your 401k? Nothing. They're backed by nothing. If the mutual funds lose money, you just get a smaller retirement account. That's it, right? So in this case, you get some real estate if anything goes wrong. Is that attractive to people? Okay, so I get a lot of people listening to me, right? Okay, let's hear it. All right, well, we got this deal. Here are the numbers. We're going to split the deal 50-50. So I'm going to be a 50% partner in this LLC, and your 401k is going to be a 50% partner in this LLC. And then you know what? When we sell the deal and make 45 grand, I get half the profit, and your 401k gets half the profit. I get 22.5, your 401k gets 22.5. Now, let's take a look at this for a second. A normal 401k indexed in mutual funds, what's the average rate of return? 3, 4, 5%, right? Annually. If you put $100,000 into an LLC that does a fix and flip, and you get your $100,000 back plus $22,500, what's your rate of return? 22.5%. Is that good? Yeah. I don't know of any bank you can walk into and be like, I want the savings account that yields 22.5%. You know, just put my money in that one. They don't exist, right? You're lucky to make 0.02 or 0.2%. And here, we just made them 22.5%. And I put that in the actual column. Why? Because we did it in 120 days. When we talk about the 3, 4, 5% returns that your mutual funds get, what term is that? Annual. So if we annualize this, how many 4-month periods are there in a year? 3. So we times it by 3, 67.5%. Wow. Backed by real estate. You can't find those returns anywhere. So at this point, by the way, this is my money pitch. Like, I'm showing you exactly how I pitch for money, okay, for equity partners. At this point, they say, absolutely. I would be stupid if I didn't. Wait a second. What about the 2008 guy? You were talking about the 2008 guy that lost all the money. What happens if 2008 happens again? Do I lose all my money? I say, well, I'm sure glad you asked. Because your money is actually completely safe. Here's what we would do in the event of 2008 happening again. So in that case, we take another $100,000 haircut on this property. We can't sell it, right? But one thing that we can do is we can refinance it. You see, before with the debt guy, he had $300,000 in debt. Which means that he couldn't take a $280,000 asset down to the bank and say, hey, I want to refinance. Here's my $280,000 in collateral. Will you please give me $300,000? Because the banker would say, no way on earth I'm doing that deal. Right? But how much do we have in debt now? $200,000. Our debt position is only $200,000. So we can take this house, this $280,000 asset, down to the bank and say, Mr. Banker, here's a $280,000 piece of collateral. I just need $200,000. If I default on the loan, you make 80 grand overnight. You okay with that? What do you think he says?
Yes, please.
You bet. Let's do it. Right? So we refinance out the 6-month guy, the hard money guy, into a 30-year mortgage. What can we do now that we have a 30-year mortgage? We can put tenants in it. We rent it out. Right? We put tenants in there, we rent it out. Now, the tenants pay rent every single month, and you know what? My equity partner, does he just lose his money? Is it, sorry, we lost the money? No. We were partners in a flip before, now we're partners in a rental. What does he get half of every month? Cash flow. Now, here we are 8 years later, values are finally back to where they were before the crash. Right? Let's say it takes another 8 years. He gets cash flow every single month for 8 years. So he's making money while everybody else is losing money in the stock market. He's making money every single month until we get back to where values were before, that 380. We sell it, he makes his 22.5. So worst case scenario, he makes more money. You think he's all right with that? Yeah. Is this pretty cool stuff? You guys feel like you learned something? You know what's interesting? Does this seem as risky as it seemed 5 minutes ago? When knowledge increases, behavior changes. Okay? The whole point of this is that an educated, knowledgeable investor is going to make smarter moves and protect themselves better. This is no more risky than going to work if you do it right. Okay? Now, just for fun, I like talking about me, so let's talk about me for a second. How much money did I put into the deal? Zero. So what's my rate of return? I feel like a third grader when I say this. I made infinity % on this deal. Now, who made the higher return, me or the equity guy? We both got 22.5, but my return was infinitely higher than his. Why? Because I'm the smarter guy. Because what I brought to the deal was knowledge, which is a more valuable currency. You see it? I love when the equity guy, the potential equity guy says, you know what, I'm bringing all the money of this deal. I'm taking all the risk. I should get like 90%. And I say, you know what? You keep your money in your 401k making 5%. I'm going to go talk to this guy over here. I'm sure he's going to be happy with 67.5. And inevitably they say, no, wait, I'm sorry. Okay, let's do it, please. Right? Because it's just a fantastic return. But I make the highest return because I'm bringing knowledge. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next thing. I want to jump back to mindset. We talked about mindset a little bit, and I want to refer back to what we talked about earlier. So, everything that the wealthy do to protect their time is based on systems, business systems. We live in America. There's some awesome examples of systems in this country. Now, another disservice that I think that the fix and flip TV shows do to what we do is they'll show, we're going to put granite in this house. Great, let's go down to the granite factory and see how granite's made. And we could get a bunch of granite swatches and take them back to the house. They got the carpet swatches. Well, let's choose this carpet because it goes with the trees outside, right? That would take forever to do a fix and flip, and I don't want to spend my time doing that. We have systems. It's the same material that we put in every house, the same tile, it's the same carpet, it's the same paint on the walls, it's the same granite, it's the same cabinets, the same appliances. We buy the stuff in bulk, so we get a discount. And the contractors, I don't need to be there to explain what colors go where. They know it's a template. They've done it 25 times before, and on the next one, if I say this bathroom gets redone, they know exactly what that means. I don't have to stand there and explain which tile goes where and point things out. They know when I say a bathroom gets redone, they know what that means. So there's a system to it, right? And there's a system to rentals. It's more than just, found a house, or we moved out of our old house and didn't sell it, and we put some tenants in there. Hopefully it works out, I guess. I don't know, right? There's more to it than that. There's a system. And everywhere you look, the wealthy have created systems to not have to use their time. In fact, there's one example that I want to refer to here. McDonald's Corporation. McDonald's is one of the greatest examples of systems ever created. It's the #1 holder of real estate in the world. Nobody owns more of this planet than McDonald's. Is that crazy? They're the #1 restaurant by revenue. They feed 1% of the Earth's population a day. Gross. So why do we go there? If it's gross, why are we all going to McDonald's?
Cheap and fast.
It's cheap, it's fast, it's convenient, right? It's because of systems. Now, look, when Ray Kroc found McDonald's in 1954, he stumbled upon it. He came across a little hamburger stand in San Bernardino, California. He walked up to the window and ordered burger, fry, and a drink. And before he had a chance to pay for it, it was sitting in front of him. Now, we take that for granted nowadays, but back in 1954, that was unheard of. The fastest thing you got was the drive-in experience where they come out and take your order, and a half hour later they bring it out and it's wrong, right? So, immediately he was like, I need to know how you did this. I want to talk to the owners now. He said, okay, well, I'll go get the owners. And out walk Dick and Mac McDonald. And they talked to Ray Kroc and they said, well, how can we help you? He said, I want to know how you did this. This is amazing. And they said, no problem. Come. We call it the Speedy system. Come see how we do it. And they took him back into the kitchen and he saw a setup a lot like what Henry Ford saw in the butcher tent. The grill was set up in first, and then they had employees lined up on tables with stations after that. And the grill guy he'd turn the patties, and when one was ready, he'd flip it over to the bottom bun guy. The bottom bun guy would pull down a sheet of paper and put a bottom bun on it, flip the patty onto it, scoot it down to the sauce guy. 3 dots of sauce, 3 dots of mayo, 3 dots of ketchup, right? Scoot it down to the pickle guy, 3 pickles, scoot it down to the top bun guy, top bun goes on, you wrap it up, you push it to the front of the store for sale, right? In 30 seconds, you got a hamburger. It was incredible. It's a system. He took that system and he added it to some other systems and he made it the largest restaurant in the world. And what's amazing about McDonald's is you can walk into any location anywhere and you'll find that most of the employees are under the age of 20. The number one restaurant in the world, the number one holder of real estate in the world, and it's run by teenagers. Systems. That's the power of systems, right? So, look, there are systems everywhere you look. And I want to chat with you about 4 systems in particular. In fact, there's 4 systems that as you make the journey from the employee mindset to the wealthy mindset, you're going to use these 4 systems for everything. Those 4 systems, those 4 pillars of wealth are taxes, banking, business, and real estate. Now I want you to know something. With these 4 systems, you can do anything you want to do. If you have an understanding, if you have knowledge of how to use these 4 systems, you can buy anything you want to buy. You could own an apartment building tomorrow. Believe me, I did it. And our initial reaction is, but wait a second, I don't have enough money in my savings account for an apartment building. My credit, it sucks. There's no way I'd qualify for an apartment building. None of these have to do with any of those things. Okay? Once you have an understanding of these, that's possible. And it doesn't have to be assets either, it could be liabilities. If you want a yacht, you can own a yacht. Anybody in here have a dream car? I had a dream car. When I was a little kid, I had a poster of a 1970s Corvette Stingray on my wall, right? And I wanted that car so bad. When I turned 16, my dad came to me and said, hey, what kind of car do you want? You're 16 years old, you get to drive now, what do you want to drive? I said, I want the Corvette, I want the Stingray. He said, well, I was thinking more like, do you want to drive the Explorer or the Accord? I said, oh, I guess I'll take the Explorer. So I drove an Explorer to high school. But I never lost my desire to have the Stingray, right? And then later on, in late 2014, I was working my website job, right? Driving down the freeway, and I see this new car I'd never seen. I'm a car guy, right? I had heard about the new Stingray coming out, but I'd never seen it. And I'm driving down I-15, and I'm approaching this car, and I see those taillights, and I'm like, is that a Ferrari? I get closer, and no, it's not a Ferrari. Is it a McLaren? What is that? I get closer, and I see the cross flags. That's the new Stingray. That's my dream car. So I pulled out my phone, and I called the appointment I was heading to, and I said, I'm really sick today, I need to reschedule. And I hung up and I drove to the dealership, right? And at the dealership, they had this beautiful gray C7 Stingray. And I just drooled on this thing. Like I was like, oh my goodness. And then after about an hour, the sales guy walked over. He's like, can I help you with something? I'm like, yeah, this is my car. Like, you got it. This is my car right here. I'll take it. How much is it? He says, oh, well, that one's $100,000. And I said, well, I make $40,000 a year. That's not going to work. So I racked my brain. I'm like, how can I afford this car? What could I do to afford this car? And I got a brilliant idea. So I asked a question. I said, how much are the payments? He said, oh, they're only $1,600 a month. And I thought, I make $3,500 a month. I can afford this car. So what I would have to do, I started doing the math in my head. So what I would have to do is half my month would go to paying the car. Right? And then in the other half, I fit in all the other stuff. So I'm going to have to cut back a little bit. So maybe I go from the 2-bedroom apartment down to the 1-bedroom apartment. Save a little bit there, right? Definitely don't need to eat so much. So maybe if I did like one meal instead of 4 or 5, and if that meal were ramen, we could make it work. right? I sell the dogs, no problem. I think I just figured out how to buy my car. Now I just have to go sell my wife on it, right? Needless to say, I did not get my car that day. But not because of my wife. She's always been very supportive. It's because of the way I thought about it. It was my mindset going into it, right? It was half my life that I would need to spend on this car. Something that would need maintenance and would break down. Something that they would release new versions of. And all of a sudden one day my car would be old. Something I put miles on. Something that would depreciate. And so as I thought about these things, I thought, you know what? It's not worth it. Half my life for 5 years? It's not worth it. So I got back in my Honda and I went back to my appointments. Right? And I didn't buy my car. Until I gained an understanding of these 4 pillars of wealth. Then, once I realized I didn't have to pay for it, I went and got my car. The gray one. The one I wanted. Right? Now, I have never paid a penny for my car. I use the 4 pillars of wealth, and I'm going to use them as an example today to show you exactly how I'm doing it. Okay? So the first pillar of wealth is taxes. Let's talk about taxes real quick. Okay? We know, see, one of those little insights that we were all told about in the employee mindset is that we can write off business miles, right? That's one of the fancy things that we think we know in the employee mindset. And what the IRS lets us write off this year is 54 cents a mile for business miles. I write off all my miles. All of them. And you're thinking, how are you doing that? Well, it's kind of like Dumb and Dumber, where you turn in the IOU. It's $350,000. You better hang on to that one, right? No. Look, the IRS doesn't let that kind of stuff get by you. I'm going to explain to you how and why I'm able to write off business and personal in a second. But let's do the math real quick. So I've driven 25,000 miles. That's a deduction of $13,500 that I've gotten to take so far. Now, I did finance the car. There's a financial strategy behind that we're going to go into quite deeply. The payment is $1,600 a month. And I've made 7 of them. That's $11,200 of cash, by the way, that's not mine. It is mine, but it didn't come from me. It didn't come from me working a job. It came from other places that we're going to talk about. But my deduction that I can take in my taxes alone is higher than what I've had to put towards payments in the car. The deductions themselves pay for them because of my knowledge and understanding of how the tax law works. Now here's what I did. Here's why I'm able to do that, right? When I was buying the car, I had paid for it, I'd signed for it, I was going to get in, open the door, I get a phone call. Pick up the phone, hello? And on the other line I hear a familiar voice say, hey, you don't happen to know anybody that has a brand new Stingray, do you? I think you gotta be kidding me. I just signed for it, I'm just getting in right now. Oh great, can I lease it from you? No, it's my dream car. I want to drive it. No, come on, dude. I really, really need to lease it from you. I got this business thing I'm doing. I need to put some advertising on it. Can I lease it from you? I said, you know what? If this was anybody else, I would totally tell them no. Absolutely. But you're the most handsome guy I've ever met. We have the same birthday. You're pretty freaking smart. It was me on the other line. So I said yes, right? What could I say? I mean, he tricked me into it. Here's what I did. I bought the car in my equipment entity. I have a company that owns all my stuff. It owns my cars. It owns my Apple Watch. It owns my iPhone and my computers. It owns the tools that the contractors use in my construction company. And the only customers of that equipment entity are my other companies. Because I will never sue myself. So all my stuff is safe. Right? And then the companies that do business with the outside world, that hire the contractors and do all the other stuff, those ones don't ever own anything, ever. Because if they ever happen to get sued for any reason, there's no value. Right? So what I did was, my equipment entity, I called my attorney, had him put a document together that says I'm turning 100% control via a lease over to my advertising entity, and I signed on both lines. That document is somewhere in case the IRS ever wants to see it, right? And now my advertising entity put advertising on it that advertises my business. Now what percentage of a billboard can you write off? 100%. And how many personal miles do I put on it in the equipment entity, according to the lease agreement? 0. See the strategy? Now the advertising, what do you think that advertises? My business. And you know what? I have a very special phone number on the Corvette that is only on the Corvette and in no other place. So when people call that phone number, I can track where sales are coming from, right? And last year in 2016, I tracked $120,000 in profit. Now the car out the door was $98,000. Did that pay for it? Absolutely. Okay? Now what you'll start to notice is these pillars pay for things by themselves as you start to structure them right. It's not combined, the 4 of them pay for it. Like our job, we have one thing that hopefully pays for everything. The 4 of them will each pay for it individually. So if one or more of them fails, we're covered. Okay? So the truly wealthy do it. Redundancy. All right. So let's talk about the third thing, real estate. How many deals like the one I did would I have to do to save up the $100,000 to go and pay cash for the car? The deal we talked about earlier, the Jordan Meadows one.
5 deals.
5 deals. Okay, at $22,500 each, it's 5 deals. I'd have the $100,000 saved up, and that's what I did. I saved up $100,000, and I went into the dealership, and they said, cash or financing? I said, financing. So he walked me over to the table. How many people have ever financed a car at a dealership before? All right, so you know what I'm talking about. He walked me over to the table, and they ask you every question, literally every question ever. Like, where did you work 47 years ago, and who is your great-great-uncle, and what is your underwear size? All the things, right? And so by the end of this questionnaire, Mike, who was the sales rep, knew that I had $100,000. And he says, you are nuts. Why would you finance this thing when you have the money to pay cash for it? I was always taught pay cash for cars. I said, Mike, how many wealthy people do you know that knowingly invest in things that lose money? None. Okay, so if I bought this car from you cash, got in it, drove around the lot, came back, threw the keys back to you, said, that was great, Mike, but I want to sell it back to you. I'm done with the car. What would you pay me for it? He said, about 70 grand. That's not a good investment. It's not a good investment. So, instead what I did is I took the $100,000 and I put a down payment on a 16-plex in Orem. And that 16-plex has a cash flow of $4,500 a month. I used a strategy called subject to, where I was able to, get this, able to negotiate with the seller that he keep his mortgage in place and I pay his payment plus a little bit, so he gets paid every single month, right? He gets my down payment, I get the title. If I ever miss payments, he gets the title back and gets to keep all the money I gave him, the $100,000, all the payments I've made. Right? Is that pretty safe for a guy who doesn't want to own an apartment building anymore? Yeah, that's pretty cool actually. Right? That strategy is called subject to, T-O. So what I did is I put $100,000 down on an apartment building that cash flows $4,500 a month. Cash flow. That's why we buy apartment buildings. Right? Is $4,500 enough to pay a $1,600 a month payment? Yeah. In fact, I affectionately refer to this property as the Corvette property, right? Because the payment for the Corvette comes out of the same account that the cash flow from the tenants goes into. So it's not my money, it's the tenants' money. The tenants are paying for the car that I get to drive around, my dream car. And you know what? At the end of 5 years, if I would have taken $100,000 cash and paid for a car, I would have had an $18,000 car that's now old. Probably an older model at that point, right? That has 100,000 miles on it or whatever. And my 100,000 would have turned into 18. Now, 5 years down the road, I've got a paid off car. I still have cash flow. I still have a 16-plex. And I still have $100,000. Where's the $100,000 at?
In the value of the property. Equity.
Absolutely. Yeah, the real estate kind of equity. I'm sorry, neighbor. No, you feel like you're learning some stuff so far? This is good stuff, right? All right, let's talk about why you're here. So, we're called Elevate. We're a local fraternity of elite real estate investors that share resources like money, contacts, you name it. We share everything. Properties. Okay? We support each other in the role of real estate investing. Now, I've seen groups like this around the country that charge $200,000, $100,000, $50,000 a year, $40,000 a year. Guess what? We don't charge any of those prices. It doesn't cost a thing to be a part of Elevate, actually. All we have is a bar for knowledge. And that bar for knowledge, we're looking for the educated type investors. That bar for knowledge we have specifically set, right? We don't want to work with the debt guy. We don't want to work with the move-in guy. We want to work with the educated investor. If I'm going to do a deal with you, because we do work together. We work together often. And if I'm going to do a deal with you, I want to be sure that you're not going to be the guy where if I say, so-and-so, go raise the money, and I'll work on the deal. And you're over Googling hard money lenders, right, to borrow all. I don't want to work with that guy. That's too dangerous for me. I need to do 5 of these at a time safely, not one that could potentially ruin my career. That's not what I'm interested in. I need to know that I'm working with an educated investor, and here we know that because we've set a bar to be a part of the group. Okay? Now, we have internal trainings. We've got a vault of over 400 hours of trainings, video trainings, taught by millionaire real estate investors from around the country. These are the experts in their field. We bring in Kendall Stock and Darren Davis from California to teach about fix and flips. We bring in Johnny Dessauer from Illinois to teach about how to pick up apartment buildings without using any of your own money. We teach hundreds and hundreds of strategies to our investors right here in the Salt Lake market. Now, education is important, right? In this education, we teach not only how to build wealth through real estate investing and business ownership, we also teach how to keep wealth. Why is keeping wealth important? How many lottery winners do you know of that are still rich like 5 years later? Right? Because let's be honest, it's poor people buying lottery tickets, right? There isn't, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, they're not lining up to buy lottery tickets, right? They know better ways. It's the poor people that think, well, this is my shot. This is how I get wealthy, right? I got to buy as many lottery tickets as I can buy. So it's usually a poor person who wins. And poor people don't know any better. Poor people don't know about structure. They don't know about tax strategies. And so when the lottery comes to them and say, hey, congratulations, you won $180 million. Who should we write the check to? Well, write it to Mitch. Who else would you write it to? I won, right? Write it to me. Now let me teach you something about these tax strategies we've been talking about. If you want to boil it down into just one idea of what these tax strategies are, when you take income into your personal name, it's taxable. This is why we have companies and entities, and right, we launder the money. No, not launder. We clean the money through all of the entities, and we pay out through the entities, and as little as possible. I'm just kidding. We really don't launder money. I'm just teasing. But we pay as little as possible to ourselves, because when it hits our personal bank account, that's income, and it's taxable. Don't think for a second that if you do a fix and flip and make $45,000, and you do it in your own personal name, that the IRS won't be knocking on your door saying, oh, you made 45 grand? I want half. We call that the unexpected partner, right? This education has a cost. The education side has a cost. And that cost is $20,000. Now, who is like super stoked, brought their fat stacks of cash tonight, ready to stand up on the chair and just make it rain? Anyone? Did you bring cash? Debit cards? I just need a PIN number. No? Checkbooks? Write it to Mitch. Just kidding, don't. I don't want the taxes. Nobody? Really? You know why? Because of the way you think about it. The way you think about money is this guy, if you're the average American, you're thinking, man, I make 40 grand a year, this guy wants half. I'm not going to give him half. Well, I'd be a hypocrite if that's the way I expect you to pay for it. I don't want your job money, right? Maybe we use the 4 pillars of wealth. How many deals like the one I just showed you would you have to do to make this worth it? One. and then the rest is cream forever, because we don't have our hand in your pocket. You don't ever pay Elevate any percentage of your deals. 0% of your deals goes back to Elevate. It's yours. Once you pay your dues, you're in for life. So it's return upon return after that. Do you know it's a tax write-off? So if you're paying taxes, you got the withholdings going on as if you're going to, make 40 grand this year, and you all of a sudden at the end of the year have a $20,000 write-off, you think you might be getting a fatty check back in April? A little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Now, there's a reason why I saved one of these strategies for last. As we wrap up the night, I want to talk to you about the banking strategy. Okay? And within the banking pillar, I've got only one, because there's multiple strategies, I got one strategy I'm going to share with you. We call it the velocity banking strategy. Okay? 2 promises I'm going to make you as we go over the velocity banking strategy. Promise number 1 is I will show you how the average American, on the average American household income, goes from, all the debt that the average American has, to debt-free with 7 rental properties without ever getting an increase in pay. The second promise I'm going to make you is that the education that I just talked about becomes essentially free. Is everybody okay with free? I thought we'd be okay with free. All right. Let's talk about velocity banking strategy. So in order to do that, I kind of need to set up a little bit of a model of what the average American banking structure looks like, okay? And the average American makes $60,000 a year. That's 2 incomes, 1 household. And $60,000 a year, that's $5,000 a month. $5,000 comes in, we take it down to the bank, we put it in the checking and savings account. Why? Because that's what we were told to do. And as employee mindset individuals, we always do with our money whatever we're told to do. So we took it down to the bank one day and said, where should we put our money? And they said, put it in checking and savings. Well, the problem with that is when you live on a cash basis, you're already splitting the pie up in your head. You're already slicing the pie, like this piece of the pie needs to go to the mortgage because if I don't pay my mortgage, they'll take my house. So this slice of the pie goes over there, right? You're slicing the pie. Mortgage, car, credit cards, and before you know it, most of the pie's gone. I'm going to stop here for a second. I want to share a quick side note, and I want to point out everything you know about banking, everything you think you know about banking, comes from the bank. And a lot of people stop me and say, wait, no, that's not true, because I hate credit cards. You brought up credit cards earlier. I hate credit cards. I was always taught to hate credit cards, and they come from the bank. Well, you know what? There's a psychology to the way the bank wants you to think about their products. Let me use an example. If you were to go down to Best Buy the day before the Super Bowl, and you were to buy a big 80-inch Samsung TV and all the speakers and the popcorn maker and the microwave, it comes to $12,000. Well, good thing we got this $15,000 credit card. I'll just swipe it, and then the next day you pay it off. How much money did the bank make in that transaction? Right next to zero, right? And yet, they had to allocate $12,000 to you. They couldn't lend it to anybody else. That was a risk. If they would have lent it to somebody else, they could have made more. They don't want to do that with you, right? So what they do is they brainwash you. In one hand, they're saying, hey, don't use credit cards. Credit cards are bad. They're scary. Look at these high interest rates. They're scary. They'll get you. And with the other hand, they're sending you offers, right? And they send us all different types of offers because there's all different types of people. They know eventually one of them will get us, right? They send you the 0%. Javine, they send you the 0% card, right? And you say, no, I don't like credit cards, right? So you tear it up, you throw it away. And then, Ryan, do you like traveling? They send you the travel rewards card, right? Thinking they're going to get you because Ryan likes traveling, right? You look at it and you think, I would really like to take my wife on a trip to Hawaii on points, but I was always taught not to use credit cards. So you rip it up and you throw it away, right? But eventually they get you. Mark, they know you're a sucker for kittens, man. They send you the card with the cute kitties on it, and you think, cute kitties? I gotta have the cute kitty card. So you sign up, right? You send it off in the mail. You wait your 10 days and it comes back. You get your cute kitty card. You're all excited. And you peel it off the paper and you see that magnetic strip across the back. And you think, dang it, they got me. I signed up for a credit card. Hope the wife doesn't find out. Let's just put it in the safe and not talk about it, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And then life goes on and life happens as it does. And I think we've all been to a point, at some point in our careers and in our lives, where there's more month left than money. You got a week left before the next paycheck and checking account's at zero. And that feeling of panic sets in and tingles down the spine and cold sweats. You think, what are we going to do? We got mouths to feed. We got bills to pay. Maybe let's just skip town. Let's go to Canada. They'll never find us there, right? Wait a second. We could sell one of the kids. That'd get us by for at least a week. Wait a second. We've got the cute kitty card in the safe. We'll just pull the cute kitty card out, and it's okay because we're desperate, right? We'll swipe a little bit for food because we're desperate. Swipe a little bit for gas because we're desperate, right? Wife's not looking, so we swipe for the big screen TV because we're desperate. I mean, come on now. We're not Neanderthals here, right? And before you know it, you've got $12,000 of desperate racked up on the card. Now, when you're desperate, can you afford to pay it off the next day? Nope. So you stretch that sucker out as far as it'll go, and you make the minimum payments. Does the bank make a lot of money then? You bet. Yeah, that's how they want you behaving, right? There's a psychology to all this stuff. Okay, so bank teaches us minimums on everything, and then budget for your lifestyle, right? Now maybe you people over here, you guys are the family people. This is the single half of the room. You guys are the family people. You have to budget a little bit more for lifestyle because you've got the soccer practice and the kids' school supplies and all that stuff. And somehow you guys always figure out how to spend the extra money. More data on your cell phone plan, I guess, because all the Tinder you're doing. But we were taught pay the minimums on everything and budget for lifestyle. And then with what's left over, save. Just put it in savings, right? We got long-term savings, we got short-term savings, we got the 401k at work. They'll match it, right? So we put a bunch of money in there, max it out. And we also have the side IRA. And then, we throw a few $100s into savings, into our savings account just in case there's, a rainy day or something. And really what a savings account is it's just a pile of money that we get to hide behind, right? And if something scary comes up, we just take a little bit of the money and throw it at it and hope it disappears, right? And the bigger the pile, the safer we feel. And when there's not scary things, the pile just sits over there. It's just a pile of money that just does nothing, just sits there, right? Now, I don't like this strategy because what that means is you have $5,000 coming in and you have $5,000 going out. Now, what the wealthy understand about the banking system and about financial models in general is that the truly important thing, more important than equity, more important than appreciation, more important than anything, is cash flow. Cash flow is king. Cash flow is the most important thing that the wealthy focus on. Now, I'm looking at a lot of models. I'm looking at rental models, flip models, Victoria's Secret models, and let's see if you're awake. Let's talk about rental models for a second. If this were a rental model, average gross rents across the United States is $1,000 a month. Is that enough information? It's bringing in $1,000 a month. I'm going to buy it. It's a rental. I need to know what the cash flow is. What if it's spending $1,100 a month? Is that good? No. I need $400 a month in cash flow if I'm going to buy a rental, and this does not qualify. It doesn't matter that it brings in $5,000 a month. You see, the employee mindset individual is so focused on, I make 60 grand a year, I make 120 grand a year. It doesn't matter. If it were a rental, we'd understand it, right? It wouldn't matter if it made $10 million a week. If the cash flow is zero, I don't want it. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Let's talk about some of this other stuff. I need to pick on somebody. Who's here for the first time? They've never seen any of this stuff before. What's your name?
Tyler.
Tyler. Can I pick on you? All right, you owe me some money. All right. You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk after. No. So you owe me some money. We agreed that you would pay interest, right? I lent you the money, and we agreed that you'd pay me interest as part of the deal. But I'm a nice guy. Just ask me, I'll tell you all about it. I'm going to let you pick your interest rate. You see, over on that side, you have a couple of 6% interest rates. Okay? And then over on this side, you've got a 21% interest rate. So I'm going to let you pick. You get to pick between 6% and 21%.
Of course, 6.
6. All right, good choice. Is this for like a trick question, anybody? All right. I'm going to use an analogy here. If I told you that 32 degrees was the freezing point of fresh water at sea level, is that a true statement? Celsius. Is that true? No, that's not true. That's actually pretty hot, right? It's Fahrenheit, right? 32 degrees Fahrenheit is the freezing point of fresh water. I made it seem like I gave you enough information. I really didn't. 32 degrees Fahrenheit is the freezing point of fresh water at sea level, along with 0 degrees Celsius. Those are the same. That's the same temperature, right? So let me ask you a question. What if I did this? Which one's hotter? 1? But it's a lower number. How could it be hotter? Oh, it's the system. Ah, okay. So what you're telling me is they're different systems. You know what? That's what the bank does. We don't ask enough when we look at interest rates, right? See, anything called a loan, by definition, is one directional, and it's amortized interest, okay? One directional, amortized interest. Anything called a line is revolving and simple interest. Two different scales of interest, okay? Now, what do I mean by revolving? I mean that if you have a credit card, which is a line of credit, and you max that thing out, and then you put some money at it, you throw a minimum payment at it, right? It's going to open up some room in the credit card. And you can go down to the gas station and you can use that room, we call it leverage, where you can use that leverage, you can swipe your card and buy gas, right? That's normal. When's the last time you ever swiped your mortgage to buy gas? But wait, you pay your mortgage every month. How come you can't swipe it to buy gas? Because it's one directional. It's called a loan. It only goes one way. And that direction is you pay it, and that's it. Okay? Now let's talk about that amortization. Here's what amortization looks like. You pay $1,200 a month to your mortgage for 30 years. And the ratio of principal to interest does this. Okay? On the very first month, payment number 1, $250 of your $1,200 goes to principal. And then $950 goes to interest. But don't worry, the bank says. Don't worry. It crisscrosses. And on the very last payment, it's actually the inverse. On payment 360, $950 of it goes to principal, and $250 go to interest. Here's my problem with that. How many people do you know that actually make it to year 30 in a single mortgage? Less than 1% of mortgage holders actually make it to year 30. What are most people doing? Every 7 years, on average, Americans refinance their mortgage, keeping them in the front end of the amortization table, paying the bank way more money than what you're actually paying down in principal. Make sense? Kind of crazy. All right. So let's just take a 4-year snapshot. Okay, 48 months. So $1,200 a month for 48 months. That's $57,000 in payments that you'll make. That math ends up being, the first 4 years, $12,000 in principal paydown and $45,000 disappears. Just goes to interest. Does that look fair? Then why are we all signing up to do it? Because anything called a loan has this amortization table, right? Mortgage loans, car loans, student loans, loans. Anything called a loan, by definition, is one directional and amortized. Okay? Now, let's take a look. From a cash flow, remember how cash flow is the most important thing to the wealthy? From a cash flow perspective, principal and interest disappear every single month. Part of that being that one directional thing. 100% of your cash flow of that $1,200, 100% of it disappears. So from a cash flow perspective, all of your payment disappears every single month. However, on the other side, the principal stays liquid. They only take the interest portion. So when you pay your credit card, they take the interest out, and then the principal opens up room that you can reuse. You can reuse that money over and over again. So, we're talking about wealthy mindset here. It was Tyler? Yeah. Tyler. All right, we're focused on wealthy mindset here. For the wealthy, cash flow is the most important thing. In a loan, it's 100% of your cash flow that disappears. In a line, it's just the interest that disappears, at 21%. So now that we've increased the knowledge a little bit, which one are you going to pick? 100% or 21%? 21. When knowledge increases, behavior changes. We completely change our attitude when we understand actually how they work, right? And when we understand that the reason the bank wants us in one product over another is because it's safer for them and it makes them more money. Gives them more control. Okay? So let's talk about the 2 rules to velocity banking. You might want to write these down because, guys, this strategy over any of the other ones I've taught you today is the one that you'll be able to go home and start applying right away to change your lives. Rule number 1, lines are better than loans. Despite what Grandma taught you, despite what we heard, despite what the guy on the radio in the afternoon says, right? Lines are better than loans. It's math. We're going to get into some of that math. All right? Rule number 2, the employee mindset is that cash is currency. We get cash, we spend it on stuff. We buy things and we pay bills. That's what we do with cash, right? The wealthy don't think that way. When they get cash, they use cash to pay down debt. They call it velocity. That's where we get the name velocity banking strategy. When the wealthy get cash, they put it all towards debt. Now think about it. If you took your whole check, let's call it that $5,000 a month, and threw it at your mortgage every single month, you'd pay down your mortgage really fast. If you were throwing $5,000 a month at your mortgage, right? But we can't do that because then we couldn't live, we couldn't eat, we couldn't pay the cell phone bill. So what the wealthy do is they take their cash and they throw it at lines, because that opens up leverage in the lines, and then they can use the leverage to live. Leverage is currency. Cash is velocity, leverage is currency. All right? So let's just take a look real quick. What happens when we apply that strategy? We take the $5,000, we throw it at the credit card. First thing that happens, bank wanted to see a minimum payment of $600 going towards the credit card. We gave them $5,000. Did we meet that minimum requirement? We're going to do that every month from here on out. Do we even need to budget for the $600 anymore? Nope. So that number can go back into our cash flow. Also, don't save. Savings accounts are for chumps. Any chumps in the room? Okay, good. All right, awesome. So don't use them anymore because they don't yield. They don't even keep up with inflation. Inflation is 3.5%. A savings account yields 0.02%. You're losing money if you keep your money in a savings account. All right? Let me show you a better way. Take all of that, add it to your cash flow, and throw the cash flow, or actually throw all of the cash into the credit card. What that does is it opens up the room. From $12,000, it drops the balance down by $5,000. And then we have $3,000 worth of living expenses at this point. So $3,000 out, that's month 1. And then we just do that every single month. Oh, maybe there's an emergency. Well, I told you not to save. What should we do if there's an emergency? We got some room. Look, our cash isn't gone. That pile of cash, it's not gone. We still have it. It's just sitting in the line of credit right here. And what it's doing is it's lowering our debt obligation, thereby lowering the amount of interest in dollars that we have to pay while we're not using it. It's actually doing something now instead of just sitting there. So we get to pay off our debt faster. That means more goes to principal, right? And so we just continue to do this until math happens. We have a $2,000 cash flow. We pay off a $12,000 balance on our credit card. 12,000 divided by 2,000? 6 months. We didn't get a raise, right? That's not what happened. We didn't affect the lifestyle at all. This isn't the beans and rice, rice and beans diet, right? All we did was change our mindset. By changing our mindset, we paid off what would have taken us 4 years, we paid off in 6 months. Okay? Now, you got a problem. Because you paid your credit all the way, your credit card all the way down. Now, money's going to start flowing over into the employee mindset account, the checking and the savings account, right? But before we get there, you know what? The bank looks at this. They say, man, you're doing really well with this credit thing. You're using a lot of it. You're paying even more of it off. Your credit score has gone through the roof. We're going to give you a credit limit increase. They just call you. Hey, we're going to add to what you can spend. You okay with that? Well, the wealthy, they use the lines of credit for assets and emergencies. So basically, they just gave you money for your emergency fund. When's the last time the bank called you and said, hey, you know what, you save like a champion. Here's $10,000 for your savings account. They ever going to do that? Never. If they do, you need to let me know your bank, because I want to bank there as well. So they increase your limit. You can use it for assets and emergencies. But in the meantime, you got to figure out how to get some more debt in there, right? Well, if you remember, we had a whole lot of debt over on the other side. We got like a $200,000 mortgage that we got to pay off, right? Well, here's what you can do. You know those balance transfer checks you get with the credit cards? They'll send them to you in the mail every now and then. You guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. You ever wonder what to do with them? What is this? A check for my credit card? This is weird. Right? Well, here's maybe an idea. Let's take some of that expensive debt and let's move it over to the cheap side. Write a $12,000 check, principal only, to the mortgage company. You send it off. The mortgage clerk gets it. He says, oh, Mark paid an extra $12,000 towards principal on his mortgage. All right, we'll mark down the principal, $12,000, right? So this is what happens. And then let's take a look at this. So we take that $12,000 now, because remember, we balance transferred it from the mortgage and the principal over to the credit card. So the mortgage balance went down by $12,000, the credit card balance went up by $12,000, we pay it off again, 6 months. Okay? Now, do you remember how long it was going to take us to pay off $12,000 in principal before? 4 years. 48 months just paying our payments. It was going to take us 4 years. And remember, it was going to cost us $45,000 in interest? By switching it over to the line of credit, if we pay it off in 6 months, like I showed you, using math, well, you love math, at a 21% interest rate, divided by 2 because we did it in 6 months, that's half of a year rather than a full year worth of interest, right? $1,260 in interest. So you paid off the 4-year principal balance in 6 months, and instead of paying $45,000 in interest, you paid $1,200. If you continue to pay off, look, you just do this cycle every 6 months, right? 1 year, 2 cycles. Year 2, 2 cycles. Year 3, you continue to do that. You pay off the 48-month principal index every 6 months, you'll pay off a 30-year mortgage in 5 years. Without getting a raise, without changing your lifestyle. Is that cool? Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. So now we've paid off the house, right? When you don't have a mortgage, you don't have a mortgage payment. Where's that money go? Cash flow, right? So we get an extra now we're at $3,200 a month in cash flow when before we were at zero. All right, well, let's keep this thing going because this is pretty cool, right? Now we start doing it with the car, right? We move the balance of the car over into the line and we pay it down the same way, right? Oh, one really important thing that I failed to mention. Remember I told you cash is velocity? If cash equals velocity, then more cash equals more velocity. So when we pay off one thing, that adds to our cash flow, which means we pay off the next thing even faster. Is that cool? Velocity curve gets steeper. We're paying it off in less time. That's pretty awesome. All right. So now we get to focus on the car when we don't have a car payment. We don't have a car loan. We don't have a car payment. And that money goes to cash flow, right? All right. And velocity curve gets steeper. Okay. And before you know it, what we thought was going to take 40 years took 6. we're completely out of debt. Now that's a big problem, to be completely out of debt 25 years faster or 30 years faster than you thought you were going to be, right? Because you don't know what to do with yourself. What do we do? This is a debt thing. We're supposed to have, now we're out of debt. I don't know what to do, right? Look, when we're little kids, mom and dad tell us, hey, don't play with fire. Fire's bad. I can't tell you how many times I was told I was going to burn the house down when I was little. Right? You'll burn the house down. Don't play with fire. Well, yeah, you could. When I grew up, I realized, fire's not necessarily bad. I was taught that it was bad, but it's not. It's a tool, yeah. I can use it for bad. I can burn the house down with it, or I can power my car, and I can cook my food, and I can heat my house. It can be good. And debt's the same way. You can burn your house down with debt, absolutely, and a lot of people do. In our immature financial mindset, we are taught that debt is bad. And you know what? In our immature financial mindset, it might be. But as we start to mature financially, we realize it's not necessarily bad inherently. It's a tool. We can use it for good. We, on one hand, can buy a boat and pay the boat payment every single month. Or we can buy the apartment building. And the apartment building pays us every single month. You can burn your house down. You can build your empire. That's how you use it. Right? So we need some debt. So what do? We get a rental. $20,000 down payment. Those balance transfer checks, right? $20,000 down payment on a rental. And I don't, how the heck are you supposed to find a $20,000 rental in Salt Lake County? That's unheard of, right? Well, what I do is I use that subject to strategy that I talked about earlier. Remember we talked about the apartment building? I find people who are behind on their mortgages, people who are going to lose their house to foreclosure. And I approach them and I say, look, a foreclosure is a 7-year ding on your credit. I've got a proposal that's a win-win for both of us. You're going to get your credit saved and I'm going to get a rental. Okay? I'm going to write a check to catch you up on your mortgage right now. 20 grand, I'll just write the check to your bank. We'll catch you up on your mortgage. All right? And in exchange, you're going to give me the title to your house. You were going to move anyway, so move. Right? I'll even pay your moving expenses. You move into that apartment you had picked out. The difference is now, instead of 7 years in that apartment, you'll only be there 2 years before you get to enjoy the benefits of home ownership again. We're going to take that negative blemish on your credit, your mortgage, and we're going to turn it into a positive. And then I'm going to make the payments every single month. On time. In fact, we'll write it into the contract. If I ever fail to make the payments, you get the house back, plus all the money I put into it. Does that seem fair? Now, he has credit repair, and I have a rental, a cash flowing rental. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac say we can put 10 mortgages in our name. Good luck finding a bank that'll give you 10 mortgages, right? But even if you do, on an average cash flow of $400 a property, that's 10 properties, 10 rentals that you could ever have. That's $4,000 a month in cash flow. When I retire, I'm 31 years old. When I retire, that is not going to be enough. But if the mortgages are in other people's names, is there any limit to the number of rentals that I can have? I can have hundreds, right? And that's what I want. I want hundreds. All right, so we write a check for a rental, and you know what? That rental increases the cash flow. So our velocity curve gets steeper by getting into debt for a rental, right? And then we take the rental and we pay it off over a 2-year period. Now, when we have that paid off rental, let's say it's worth $120,000, we take it down to the bank and we say, Mr. Banker, I was here 6 years ago and you told me to get a mortgage. You were wrong. I'm here today, I want to get a HELOC. What's a HELOC?
Home equity line of credit.
Home equity line of credit. So is that a loan or a line?
Line.
Amortized or simple interest?
Simple.
Simple, and it's revolving, right? And we decided already we can only use lines for assets or emergencies. Well, there's no emergencies right now, so let's use it for assets. We have a $120,000 line of credit based on this asset. How many $20,000 down payments can we make out of a $120,000 line of credit? 6. And what's 6 times 400? $2,400. So now our new cash flow is $6,600. And our velocity curve increases, we pay things off even faster. Took us 5 years to pay off the mortgage, another year to pay off the car, 2 more years to pay off the first rental, and 2 more years to pay off the line for the second set of rentals. 10 years down the road, on the average American income, we never got a raise. We're completely out of debt with 7 rental properties. Promise 1 fulfilled. Now, promise 2 was that I would show you how to get the knowledge to do this kind of stuff, that $20,000 becomes effectively free. Okay? To do that, skip some stuff here, sorry. Out of debt, yay. All right, this is Dane. Dane's my friend, also one of my students. Dane joined us a little over a year ago. And when Dane came in, he was a roofer. And he said, how the heck am I supposed to pay for this on a roofer's salary? Well, I said, well, why don't you use one of those, that third currency we talked about, relationships. You can leverage one of my relationships. He went down and he leveraged one of my relationships at a bank and got a $30,000 line of credit, unsecured line of credit, at 0% for 24 months. Now here's the cool thing about 0%. It does some really cool things when we're talking velocity banking strategy, okay? First thing Dane did with that line of credit was he paid off his car. He wrote one of those balance transfer checks, paid off his car completely. In a few days, he got the title back in the mail. He still had the debt for the car. It was sitting in the line. But he got his title back, which means that they could never come and take his car away from him. His car was his, right? And then after he swept some of his debt over, he bought his first asset. He paid for his education. So on his $30,000 line, he had $25,000 limit. And here's what he did. Exactly what I just taught you. He put all of his income in, and then expenses came out. Now his expenses were lower because he no longer had a car payment, right? So his cash flow went up. And then the next month, income went in, expenses came out. Here's the interesting thing. When he put his income in, how much did the bank take in interest? 0. Because 0% interest for 24 months. It took him 10 months to pay it all the way down to 0. He had like 3 years left on his car loan. He would have been paying his car for 3 years. He paid off the debt on his car and on the education costs in 10 months using this strategy. Is 10 less than 24? Yeah. And you know what? That didn't affect his cash flow at all because it's 0 interest. They didn't take anything out for interest, so he kept, let's say it's $5,000 that he was putting in. He kept all $5,000 worth of buying power. Okay? So when he got done, after 10 months, he's got 14 months left of 0% interest. What do you think he did with it? He bought a rental, right? Down payment on a duplex, actually. Now Dane is doing a lot of deals. He's doing, he just finished a commercial deal where the guy's going to make like $1,600 a month in cash flow. It's incredible. And he's been doing this for just a little bit over a year. This is Dane and his infant son or toddler son. I don't know what that is. I don't have kids, so I have no idea. Look, this isn't for everybody. Okay? Some of you are thinking to yourselves, I don't know what he was talking about tonight. Like this rental stuff, flips and flip, whatever the heck he did with the banking thing, that was just, holy cow, way too much. You might be feeling a little bit like this. Right? Just overwhelmed. If this isn't for you, that's fine. If this isn't for you, thank you very much for your time. You can go home. I understand that this isn't for everybody. There are others of you that are thinking, holy crap, this is awesome. I want to do the flips. I want to do the rentals. I want to do whatever the heck he was talking about with the bank, right? You're feeling like this. Like, this is awesome. Let's do it, right? For those of you who are the second type of individual, we want to talk to you again. Okay? There is not enough time for me to go over all the strategies that I need to share with you in order to understand how to do what we do. Okay? We actually, Dane, the guy who was on the screen, he's going to be here tomorrow. We're holding a continuation to this workshop tomorrow upstairs. Now, we've got a few things for you. For those of you who sign up to come to the class tomorrow, and it's absolutely free, by the way. For those of you who sign up to come to the class tomorrow, we're going to be sampling the vault of trainings that we talked about. Okay, you're going to get to watch some of this education, and you're going to get to see some cool tax strategies. All right. Now, back at the back table is where we want you to sign up. I did not, you saw us have to set up some chairs when all of you came in. I did not count on this many people tonight. So we have 40 places for tomorrow, okay? I did bring some books. I brought some copies of my best-selling book, Mindset to Millionaire. For those of you, for the first 40 that sign up for our workshop tomorrow, you guys are going to get to go home with some books. Now, I'm going to stick around for a little bit. If you want to come up and talk to me, ask some questions, I'll be here. I'm happy to sign the book if you'd like. You're also going to get a Velocity banking calculator. We're going to give you some software tonight, just for signing up for the continuation of the workshop tomorrow. If you think you have 40 years of debt, guess what? Plug your numbers into this thing, you'll find out it's like 4. Okay? So you're going to get that. We're also, tomorrow, Dane's going to go over our 90-day plan. If you're going to become a part of this community, there's some pretty high expectations. We're going to have some goals that we want you to set. One of those goals is we want you to be in a deal by 90 days. And we're going to lay out a roadmap of how to do that. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You guys have been great. Have a fantastic night. Thanks for letting me pick on you. Thanks for coming, guys.
Workshop that you're doing tomorrow, will you do it again next week?
Dane will be doing it again next week. Yeah,
because we're going to be out of town. We're leaving town tomorrow.
Who invited you down?
What?
Who invited you down? Bill?
Bill did.
All right, well, Bill's got some other options for you.
Okay.
All right? How you doing? Kathy? Yeah, thanks for letting me pick on you guys. That's what you get for sitting on the front row.
Actually, I was gonna, I'm gonna be gone tomorrow, but I'm really interested in this. Is there anything I can do to catch up after?
Tyler's got some other options for you, so you can go over. We got a Saturday activity, we got some Monday activities, so
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you. It was
Thanks.
a good speech.
Yeah, thanks for letting me pick on you, man. Appreciate it.